Go to this computer. Fantastic. I'm just waiting for us to go live. This is where technology usually is very mean to me and logs me off. We are live. No, we are live. Excellent. Fantastic. Right, we are live, we are recording, we are here. Thank you so much, very much, everybody, for joining us. This is the fantastic Lauren Chiren. She is from Women of a Certain Stage, and she is our guest expert menopause coach, probably the most knowledgeable expert we have had in this group. So I am super excited for this. Most experienced in her own field, in business. So I would be doing her a disservice if I was to say and speak about what she does. So I want to hand this over to you, Lauren, and thank you so much for joining me. And feel free to introduce yourself.
Well, I left my job in my early 40s thinking I had early onset dementia. And at the time I was a senior exec in financial services. I loved the job that I did. I worked in regulatory and compliance change and had teams all over the world and really thrived on the kind of complexity of the work that I did and systems change, process people, all of that kind of good stuff until I couldn't find the words that I needed in meetings or would forget someone's name or literally didn't sleep for 18 months and my anxiety levels got to the point where I really thought something was wrong. So I did leave work and I found myself at the doctor's surgery when he said to me, "You've just been through the menopause." I was like, "Menopause? I'm the happiest menopausal woman in Bristol." So I was so relieved to find out that it was just menopause and not early onset dementia that I started bringing people together to talk about the topic. And I soon discovered that I wasn't the only one who didn't know very much about it and definitely didn't know how to, successfully navigate my way through. So I've spent the last 10 years working pretty much just to raise awareness, to train people to become menopause coaches and menopause champions, and working with companies across the world to help them become menopause savvy and menopause supportive as well. And my goal really is to train 20,000 menopause coaches in the next 10 years and also to make sure that every single employer understands what menopause is and how to get the right help and support for all their people, not just the people going through menopause, but everyone who's living, working, and socializing with somebody going through menopause so that they, can continue to thrive during this stage because we are packed with skills, knowledge, and experience, and we shouldn't be hamstrung just because of our hormones. So, does that do by way of an introduction?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. As you can guys tell, Lauren is absolutely fantastic, and I love her work. So there's no way I was going to get anyone else on. So thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. So of course we have a lot of women in this group, predominantly plant-based or want to go plant-based. The group is also mostly for weight loss. So I'd love to focus a lot on women's health, maybe cover sleep as well. Women's health, weight loss, hormones, and all of that business, which I'm, to be honest, very unfamiliar with. And, I'm quite embarrassed about it, to be honest. I've done a podcast and a training, but I would love to hear your side of it. So do have a few questions which we can go through, and please, by all means, like go on any tangent you want, mention anything that you need to. We are all here for your wealth of knowledge. So would you be able to start off by just kind of defining and breaking the perimenopause, postmenopause, just the stages down that we typically hear about? So the peri, is it even called menopause when you're going through it? And then is it postmenopause afterwards? Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, so the first thing I want to say is that by the time we become menopausal, which I'll define in a moment, we have got so many skills, knowledge, and experience, and we're such an asset to our families, our communities, and our workplaces that this is one of the key things why I'm really passionate about making sure we can really, step into our personal power, boost our vitality, and increase our influence when we're going through menopause. And that's my overriding message that I want to give. And the only reason that people suffer and struggle is because of that lack of knowledge. So that is a brilliant question to start with. So what is it? What is this thing called menopause? Well, first of all, if you think about when we go through puberty, we will find that our bodies change shape. We are going to potentially have hairs sprouting where they didn't appear before. We might get a bit smelly, we might get a bit ratty, we might get a bit moody, we might slam the occasional door or become quite forgetful. And yet nobody rushes us off to the doctors worrying about us when we're going through puberty normally, right? Um, so when we think about this in reverse, then that's really what's happening when we go through perimenopause and menopause. So we have this surge of hormones when we hit puberty, bodies fill out, brains change, the way we think, how we behave, how we interact with the world changes a lot as well. And that's because these hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, really influence how we think, how we feel, how we behave. And so it's not just, you have all these stereotypes of people talking about moody this and monthly that, but it is genuine hormones that are driving this monthly cycle. And obviously, not all of us have a monthly cycle, but our periods. And then as we're coming to the end of our, whatever normal is for us, as we're coming to the end of our monthly cycles, periods, menstrual cycles, whatever you want to call it, the hormone levels start to decline again. So all the estrogen, progesterone, and slightly on the testosterone side as well, those hormones start to decline, but not in a nice linear fashion. Estrogen tends to decline a bit like a roller coaster. And that's why we get all these kind of surges of hormones and decline of hormones, and that really affects how our bodies react, how our brains react. And so this phase where we're going through a bit like puberty when hormone levels were rising, as they're coming down, this phase is called perimenopause. So when we're in perimenopause, typically we are still having a monthly cycle. And if we're on something like the Mirena coil, we're taking contraception that masks our cycle, we won't know that this is an indicator that we're in perimenopause. We'll go on our symptoms rather than our cycle. But usually periods get heavier or lighter, they'll get closer together or further apart. And this is when specifically estrogen levels, as they're, coming down, we might notice we get dry eyes, itchy skin, vaginal dryness, vulval dryness, bladder problems, all of these things that are linked to the reduction in estrogen in our body. And perimenopause can be really confusing because it also comes at a time when we're usually at the most senior roles in our career or our business. Often when we're at a time when we've still, if we've had children or we've had a family, we may still have children at home and have that responsibility. So we're this kind of sandwich um, place in our life where we're looking after potentially elderly relatives, we've still got younger family members at home, we're working with a career, and there's very, very little time left for us. So it can feel like quite a stressful time with or without perimenopause. So perimenopause goes on for a few years, and I say few years very deliberately because there's no specific length of time. We've all got that friend that one day they weren't having periods, the next day they were, and they never seemed to change all that much and their moods didn't change. And it's the same with kind of perimenopause. You've got the friend that one minute had monthly cycle and then the next minute didn't. And then you've got other people that struggle and suffer for years. So there's no length of time that it typically happens over. And then when we've gone 12 months without a bleed, we say that we are now menopausal, and it's literally just the anniversary of our last cycle. And thereafter, we're postmenopausal for the rest of our life. But what's important about that is that, so we typically become menopausal between 45 and 55, which means we're perimenopausal anywhere from our late 30s onwards. So if you're someone who's thinking about having family and leaving it later, just be mindful that there's a reason why, I was called geriatric mother at 37 when I had my son. There's a reason why terminology like that still exists, because our egg supply is declining. So what I want to just kind of close with all of that information really is to say that by the time we become menopausal, we've probably had a monthly cycle for about 37 years, and we're only halfway through our adult life. We're probably going to live for another 37 years post-menopausally, and we've got all this incredible, skills, knowledge, and experience to share with the world. So for me, I just want to kind of reframe menopause into the positive and help people get the right knowledge and get the right awareness of what they can do to help support each other. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to everyone today.
Oh my goodness, my pleasure. I could never ask anyone else on, to be honest with you. Okay, so can I just clarify that? I'm not too sure if anyone would have the same question. So when people say I'm going through the menopause, are they essentially going through perimenopause? And then, like you said, menopause is that celebration of a year after your last period. And so then it's technically postmenopause. So like menopause as a phase is just a celebration almost, is that like date? And then it's
So
post.
yeah, so technically the menopause transition is, so menopause is your 1 day anniversary. But when you look at it from a medical lens or you look at it from a terminology lens, then we talk about the menopause transition as the technically correct terminology. And it's everything from the beginning of the decline of the hormones to the settling down of the hormones. And in between all of that, you'll go through peri, you'll become menopausal, and then it'll take another few years to settle down. So people will still talk about being in menopause, even though they're post-menopause. So there
Mhm.
comes a point where some people go, well, I'm done, I'm back to normal now. Other people, symptoms can go on for a bit longer. So everyone's really unique in their experience of menopause.
Yeah, and I think my mum has said that she has had about 9 months of not having a period, and then she's like, yeah, okay, that's it, and then all of a sudden she bleeds again, and I've heard of this happening for quite a lot of women. And so then it's just kind of like a little bit of a mindset shift of like, maybe they were mourning a little bit and just, being like, right, okay, this is the next stage of my life. And now they're kind of like shoved backwards again. So
Yeah.
I guess with that question is what kind of like psychological effects does this whole transformation like have on women?
It varies. Everyone's journey is different. So, I've spoken about natural normal menopause, but then we've got people who will have a premature menopause like me. So I went through menopause by 37, and there'll be people who have an early menopause. So premature is under 40, early menopause is between 40 and 45. And then you'll have people that are put into surgical menopause or medical menopause because of a hysterectomy, oophorectomy, chemotherapy, lots of other medical reasons why people get put into menopause. So I think depending on what age you are, whether you wanted and had a family or not, depending whether you're just delighted to see the back of your periods, um, you're going to have a different psychological response to that. And the majority of people I've worked with, I think it's more a case of they just want the whole thing to be over and they're quite happy to be through the other side. But
Mm,
then, there will be people as well who desperately want to have a family, haven't had their family yet, may still be going through fertility treatment. And then that is a massive loss. And a lot of people, again, comes down to mindset, which is why it's the first thing I work on with people is, what is your mindset about menopause? What are you celebrating about this? Because you're coming into it going, well, actually, the fact that I have a cycle means I'm fertile, I'm youthful, I'm all these things, and therefore I'm still valid.
mm,
If that's an association, then obviously
mm,
someone's going to struggle a lot more when they become perimenopausal or menopausal. But if we can switch that mindset around and look at people as the matriarchs, or even just look at people as being freaking amazing for all the things they've achieved while they've been managing monthly cycle as well, all the education and the work and their relationships and all the stuff, all the things that they've done, and just get people to celebrate, my gosh, I've really amazingly done all this stuff and now I can go and do so much more, and I don't have to worry about monthly cycle and all the ups and downs that come with that. So
mhm,
for me, mindset, I think, comes down to a lot of, things depending on how the menopause happened, if it's natural or induced,
mhm.
whether people wanted family or not, what they associate menopause with, what culture and background they come from as well has a big role to play. So yeah, I think there's lots of different aspects to that.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, and it's so individual, and I'm going to ask you all these questions, and I know it's very difficult to pinpoint things and say that it's definitely going to be this and that because everyone is going to be different, which is, I guess, very important to make a note of. Okay, thank you. So can we look at the hormone levels then? Because that's something that I find really interesting, and how the hormone levels during menopause can affect the body composition and metabolism and just the way that we run and feel as well.
Wow, lots to unpack in there. So
Sorry,
if
you can
no,
do
no,
it
no, it's
lightly if
okay.
you want.
It,
We've
it's
only
just
got
it's a
30
huge. I've been studying it for 10 years, and there's still a lot more research to be done. So
and
again,
years more than me.
depending depending what search engine you've used, or if you've gone on to Doctor Google, the other search engines are obviously available. But depending what you've researched, depending what books you've read, depending who you follow, you're going to hear different things. And there's emerging research and there is contradictory research and one of the key things I like to do in the work is kind of make sense of all of that.
Mhm,
So in essence, your estrogen, progesterone, testosterone have a role to play in our cognitive health, our heart health, and our bone health. They play a big role in our blood. They play a big role in our management of our insulin and cortisol. Estrogen particularly has a role to play in our oxytocin and serotonin. So if you start to think about the body systems, you start to think that estrogen, progesterone, testosterone impact how we cognize the world, how we think about, how we interact with the world. If the levels are fluctuating, our ability to remain static becomes more challenging. If we think about the fact that there's a direct correlation between estrogen and oxytocin, so that chemical that enables us to bond, to love, to trust other people, then or just interpret the world around us accurately. If estrogen levels are coming down, oxytocin levels typically are coming down as well. And therefore, our ability to listen to somebody and take on face value what they're saying can be disrupted. So we can start to second guess what people are saying, and we can actually get to the point of being paranoid and reading between the lines. And I know some people will recognize that, like there are times in the month when they feel more like that than other times of the month, but that can become quite pronounced, and that can cause quite a lot of disconnect. And it can
Hmm.
also leave people to feel quite isolated, not wanting to socialize as well. So when we think about progesterone, so we tend to think of that as our calming chemical, the one that helps us switch off and relax and unwind, get a good night's sleep. So if that takes a nosedive quite quickly, equally, we might find that it's much harder to relax. It might be harder to get a night's sleep. There's so many, sorry, I've gone off on a tangent.
It's
Um,
okay.
there's just so many different roles that these play. But when we think about weight loss, when we think about weight management, we think about energy levels, then if we think that one of the number one symptoms of menopause is lack of sleep, I only have to say, how do you feel if you haven't slept well for a few nights?
Mm.
You know, and we think about how you feel when you haven't slept well for a few nights. I didn't sleep for 18 months. I didn't sleep for more than maybe 2 hours a night for 18 months. And yet you're still running a house, working full time, looking after a baby, all of those things. And you're kind of like, you're just in survival mode at that point. So um, then we look at the kind of metabolism side of things, and we look at the fact that there's again a correlation with how we not correlate, that what's the word I'm looking for, menopausal moment, the way we regulate our cortisol and our insulin. So if you think
Mm.
about your blood sugar and being able to sustain your blood sugar levels, sustain your insulin levels, if your ability to sustain and to manage your insulin is disrupted, then obviously your blood sugar levels get disrupted, which means your appetite is going to be impacted. And then the flip side of that is your stress levels tend to be higher, so your cortisol levels tend to be higher. And that's going to have an impact on weight management.
Hmm.
So if you've got disrupted insulin, disrupted cortisol, that ability to keep your blood sugar in that central healthy zone, which is what we're aiming to do to maintain our mood, to maintain our metabolism, it can be really challenging, but it's not impossible. And that's one of the things that I think is really important for us to understand, that yes, these things are influenced by the change in our hormones, but we can influence how that works by
Hmm.
putting ourselves into a healthy state. And there's a ton of research out there about intermittent fasting, or eating more regularly. And I think that we need to go through a process to find out what works for us. I know you're not specifically asking about any of them, but it is
It was
entirely.
one of my later questions, don't you
Was
worry.
it? Was it? Okay, well, I might take the fifth on some of the specifics on that, because we know that. So, for example, I eat 6 times a day. I have 3 meals and 3 snacks, and I space them out every 2 to 4 hours. And I know if I do that, my blood sugar is pretty steady. I'm as hyperactive in the evening as I am in the morning, and I don't move within 2 pounds of my normal weight range. I also know that we have to increase our protein. So from a plant-based point of view, it starts to become really critical that in every meal and every snack, we've got a good amount of protein in our food, which obviously from a calorific point of view can be different if you're switching from non-plant to plant-based. So we need to start thinking about how do we get the right quantity of protein in a way that's digestible. And that's often quite a big conversation for someone that's not used to thinking about how much protein am I eating, how many beans, how much corn, how much tofu, how much whatever. But actually that becomes really important as well. So I work well on little and often. I've got people that swear by IF, intermittent fasting. It doesn't work for me. I need that constant drip feed of food into my system. And most of the people I've worked with fall into that category, but I have spoken to people and interviewed people who love IF as well. That helps.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So, it's really about finding a method that works for you as you're going through, and as your body is changing, as things are being affected, if your sleep's being impacted, as you said, if your insulin's being impacted, your cravings are going to be all out of whack, the stress is going to be all out of whack, which is then going to reflect on your cravings. And yeah, I think yeah, it's all related. I think the same with weight loss, with energy increase, it's all very similar. If one's down, like I call them the fundamental pillars of health. So I talk about nutrition, movement, stress, sleep, and water. And if one of them's down, everything else is going to be out of whack. And would I be right in saying that the same applies for women going through menopause? Um, and just finding something that works for them that might have been different a few years before.
Yeah, I think, for me, the fundamentals are mindset, hydration, so your water, mindset, hydration, nutrition, movement, rest and relaxation, because if we don't get the rest and relaxation in, there's practically no point in anything else. Boundaries and responsibilities, and then putting it all together. And it's all about making tiny little tweaks and changes. So at every stage, when you're pregnant, you eat differently. Throughout the month, you eat differently. Most people do. And we just have to recognize that all of those things are driven by hormones. And
Hmm.
menopause is a great big hormonal shift. As teenagers, we tend to, well, our appetites go up because our bodies are changing. And then typically we're normally trying to stay into whatever shape we want to be as we're teenagers and young adults. Um, but there's definitely a thing about recognizing our consumption of calories or food, of nutrients, whatever you want to call it, whatever language lands well with you. That has to change to suit the stage of life, and we don't need as much input as we get older because our body composition changes, but it becomes even more important to exercise more and to build muscle and to do weight training. So
Mm.
we have to do that because from 30 onwards you start losing muscle mass. So if you're not doing
Hmm.
your weight training, and it doesn't have to be going to the gym and lifting heavy weights, but if you're not doing something to maintain your muscle mass, then even as a personal trainer, I sadly did have 2 or 3 years where I didn't do as much gym training as I should have done. And my goodness, my legs and my bottom just went, and I was like, oh my God, and it's really hard work to get it back when you're older.
Yeah.
So, if wherever you're at, it's never too late to start. Do your
Hmm.
weights, do them now.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
I'm glad you said that because I actually forgot to write it down about exercise and movement and resistance training, strength training. It is so important for every aspect of your life, not only just weight, but mental health and, of course, balancing and regulating hormones. And as you said, as we get older, our muscle mass and bone density does decline. So exercise is going to help with that.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that. So, because I talk a lot about going to the gym, and I get a lot of clients that will come to me and be like, "Oh, yeah, but I'm older." I'm like, "That's no excuse. I promise you.
no,
Come on, let's go. Let's go do something that you find
yeah.
fun."
Yeah, yeah. Don't care if it's dancing naked around your house or getting hold of your partner and having a wicked night, whatever you want to do. Doesn't matter. Just get
Just burn
physical.
some calories.
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent, excellent. This might be a little bit touchy, so you don't have to answer if you don't want to. I know you're not plant-based, but I had to ask. I absolutely had to ask about the importance of like a healthy lifestyle before and during menopause. And it doesn't necessarily we don't necessarily have to refer to a plant-based diet, but is it important to have a healthy body, a healthy mindset before you go in to have an easier menopause and have do you know what I'm getting at here?
Life's just easier if you look after yourself,
Yeah.
right? So did you see the article I wrote?
No, I
Um,
haven't.
all right. So I wrote a great big, massive, great big long. I think it's in the Women's Journal or something. It's like all about plant-based eating during menopause.
Mhm.
So I can send the link over to you if you've not got
Yeah,
that.
absolutely, absolutely.
But it's a great
If
big.
the ladies in here can read it as well, I can
Yeah,
post that
yeah. So I
underneath this
just
video.
sent you the
Yeah.
link. So great. I wrote a great big article. So there's plant-based, which I would say I am plant-based, but I am not
Oh, I
vegan.
thought I didn't know. Okay,
I'm
yeah.
not vegan, so it depends how you define plant-based, right?
Hmm.
So would I, if someone put chicken down in front of me, would I eat it? Potentially. Do I eat eggs? Yes, now and then. So I'm not vegan, but I would say 95% of my food is plant-based.
Hmm.
So, I will supplement, I do supplement with protein shakes because I know I don't always get enough protein into my diet, but I eat beans every day, lentils every day, corn every day, couscous, and not couscous, quinoa every day.
Hmm.
Um, I've got my set meals that I do to make sure, but I've also got my nuts, my avocados, all my good oils in there as well, because your good oils and your good fats your good fat is critical to your brain function when we're going through menopause and your joints and everything
Yeah,
else. So you
yeah.
need to get your amino acids in, you need to get your essential fatty acids in there as well.
Hmm.
So, no, I'm not plant-based 100% in terms of vegan, but I am
You're more
very,
plant-based than I thought, though.
right, okay. Well, I haven't eaten meat since I was 11.
Wow,
So the last time I had red meat was a Wendy's burger, which I violently threw up down the toilet and never touched a bit of red meat ever again.
interesting.
And I was vegetarian until I was 24. So there was 13 years. And then
Mm.
because I was doing a lot of weightlifting, I was encouraged to go back onto chicken. I don't eat fish, I don't eat red meat. I never have. So yeah, I'm predominantly plant-based, but I would never
Okay.
describe myself as vegan. Um, but what that means is you've got to be really conscious of making sure you're getting all your food groups in, and you've got to be
Hmm.
much more mindful, I think, as someone who's plant-based, you've got to be more mindful to make sure you're getting your fats and your proteins in. Carbs are not that difficult to get in as plant-based. But so that took me a bit of time just to get that balance right going through menopause. Oh, now that's interesting. This obviously
Lovely Zoom. What a wonderful
Hi
effect.
Zoom. That's an interesting one.
I didn't do
Um,
anything, I swear.
that is so weird. I've not seen that one before. Um, so yeah, so I think that I don't care where you're at in life or what age and stage you're at. The better you hydrate, the better you nourish yourself, the better you move your body, the better sleep and routine you've got in. I think all of these pillars are absolutely fundamental. So wherever you're at, whatever stage you're at, I think that the sooner you can improve, like 1% teeny tiny incremental improvement in each of those areas of your life is going to take you towards a healthier future.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because I don't know if you noticed one of the comments underneath was a good friend of mine, Karen. She definitely wanted to know about her menopause because she said that she had very, very few and very minimal symptoms, but she's been whole food plant-based for a long time.
Yeah.
And so having that diet for a long time and having a healthy lifestyle, do you think her low to no symptoms was the result of a healthy lifestyle before that?
So let me give you some context. So before I became menopausal as a personal trainer, I was training regularly, I was sleeping regularly, I was eating incredibly well. I'm a nutritional advisor as well. I was definitely hydrating well, I was really looking after myself very, very well. And I had probably one of the worst menopause experiences that there is on the planet. So it's interesting because what I've discovered was I didn't have enough protein, I didn't have enough fat in my diet, and I was overtraining, not getting enough rest and recovery. So I don't think that we can say that there's any one right route, but it's
Hmm.
the right route for that individual. And we know that about 15 to 20% of people are going to sail through menopause without any or many symptoms at all. And there's going to be 25% of people that have severe symptoms and everyone else be in the middle. So I was obviously in the severe end. So I wasn't doing anything that anyone would look at my lifestyle and say, oh, that's, you're drinking too much, you're not exercising, you're lazy, you're not, nobody would have looked at my lifestyle and said any of those things.
Mm.
So I think it's very hard to say that there's any one right way to navigate menopause. And I'm also very wary um, of saying that this is the right route. I'm much more inclined to say to somebody, let's see what works for you and create your own personal
Hmm.
menopause plan. Um, that said, and I know that if you're gorging on processed foods, you're drinking tons of caffeine and alcohol, you're living in a highly polluted city and you're using loads of chemicals in your body every day, your body can't regulate all of that. We're not designed to be able to accommodate and manage all of that. So all of
Hmm.
those things are hormone disruptors, and all of those things can have a negative impact on how we experience menopause. So obviously I don't like the expression cleaner, but obviously the
Hmm.
more natural our life is, both from the air we breathe, the water we drink, the foods, all of that stuff, we're making it easier for our bodies to work.
Mm,
So there's
hmm
something in it, but there isn't enough research at the moment to say that being plant-based is enough just to give us a great transition, although
mm.
watch this space.
Well, I would absolutely love to hold the trophy up and be like, haha, plant-based by a resounding
Yeah.
unanimous vote. There is a lot of research, as you said, and by the lights of, I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Michael Greger, pulls up a lot about estrogen helping complement and neutralize a little bit of the symptoms. But again, it's so many women in the world, the study has to be humongous. And as much as I would like to say, full stop, absolutely plant-based lifestyle is the way to go, it sounds like the healthiest that you can be is the best way to go for you.
So one of the things that you and I have both been trained on is a 7-week program of taking people through a process of going plant-based for 7 days, right? Whereby we increase the hydration, we take out caffeine and alcohol, we go completely plant-based for 7 days, and every single person I take through that process has more energy, sleeps better, loses the bloat, loses the joint pain in 7 days, and that's by going plant-based for 7 days. So, you know, I don't think it takes too much convincing to know that you're not going to do yourself any harm by going plant-based at all. And
Hmm
definitely, I know that it's definitely the route that I, encourage people to try it and just eliminate all the processed stuff and all the things that we buy, even in a farmer's market. We don't know what's going into it. We
hmm
don't know, I grow a lot of my own stuff here at home, so um, I would much rather know what's in my food than, yeah.
Yeah, like the other day, the new documentary that we watched on Netflix the other night was Poisoned, and it's yeah.
Yeah,
Have you seen that one?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. When he started off with romaine, I was like, oh, this is going to be an anti-vegan one. And then he goes straight on to meat. And I was like, yeah, there we go. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, well, I've got a bunch of questions, but you've already pretty much answered them for me. Um, I think I know that someone's spoken to me before, and I would like to confirm, what I've said and recommended is true. But I find that a lot of women will tend to react stronger to sugar, and you did mention about
Oh yeah.
insulin being an issue. So is it normal for what we've mentioned about the high stress and the high craving? So it's going to be normal for people to want more sugary foods and crave those
Mhm.
foods. But is it normal for the body to load on more weight easier? Um, or do you think it's more of what we're putting in our mouths as a result of those things?
All of the above. So
Okay.
if you think about it, if you're not sleeping well and your ability to regulate your blood sugar is diminished, you're going to want more. And we
Mm,
know that whatever we did yesterday, our body is going to try and replicate that because that's what our brain does. It wants to keep us alive and repeat what we did yesterday to keep us alive, even if it's bad. And that's what perpetuates so many bad habits is the fact the brain is driving us to do that. So we know also that too much sugar in the diet or refined sugar is going to cause inflammation. If the
mhm,
body's inflamed, it's going to be sore. It's going to be causing pain. You're going to feel bloated. You're going to feel uncomfortable. Your joints are going to hurt. So sugar generally and menopause, not a good match. Not a
mm,
good match at all. If you're going to get sugars, get them from your food. And I even say to people if they're struggling, I would say just step away from fruit juice, step away from, any refined sugars whatsoever. If you want sugar, make sure if you want to eat fruit, make sure you're eating the whole fruit so you've got the fiber from it and you're slowing down that absorption. But definitely sugar is not the best friend of someone going through any hormonal changes, especially going through menopause.
mhm, mhm. There you go. So all of those
Sorry.
biscuits, let's throw them away. Um, I think that answered that one.
Can I jump in quickly?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Please,
So
please.
one of the things I make this nearly every day. I just mash up some bananas with some protein powder and some nuts, and then blend it all up and make it into cookies. and that way I can have a couple of cookies every day, but it's protein powder, nuts, and bananas. So I
I've
get my
never tried
sleep.
that before.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just, it's protein powder, not protein meal replacement, but just
Yeah.
six protein powder, a couple of bananas, 8 or 10 nuts, blend it all up, and that gives me 4 or 5 cookies, and that'll do me for a couple of days.
I'm gonna go and try that because I have all of those. My partner's gonna be like, "What are you making?" I'll be like, "Cookies." He'll be like,
hmm
"Oh, of course, of course." Um, okie dokie. So I love that. That was a great one. How important is it for women to seek some personal guidance and support throughout this phase?
What do you feel you need? I think that the first thing I say, I think I run a free menopause the basics course. So the first thing I always say to people is make sure you've watched this. You probably don't need the free course, but it's a 3-day course where we dive into the mechanics of menopause, how to support yourself through menopause, and then menopause and work.
Hmm.
And for me, 86% of people going through menopause neither know what it is nor how it's going to impact them. So we want to, first of all, make sure people really understand what menopause is, what's likely to happen, and what you can do to support yourself. So the first thing I always say to people is get your knowledge up. And then asking for help and support is something we're notoriously bad at doing. So get good at doing it. Not just asking for help and support, but receiving help and support as well, because sometimes we can ask, but we might not be so gracious in receiving it. So I think that, ask your partner, ask your family members, ask your friends, ask your work colleagues, ask your boss, ask your doctor. Really pull together that network of support around you, because it's something that I definitely didn't do. But I didn't know I was going through menopause at the time. But I think that in hindsight, that would definitely be something I would have done differently.
Hmm. Hmm. Fantastic. Okay, and I don't know if this is one that you would want to comment on. Can hormone replacement therapy, aka HRT, or other medications influence weight management during menopause?
Um, I can't really comment on that because
Okay.
there's too many variables that are
Yeah,
involved in answering it.
sorry,
So
throwing you under the bus with that
no, no,
one.
no, no, not at all. I've done training on HRT. I'm not a medic and I can't make medical propositions, but I can comment on these things. But to be honest with you, there are so many different aspects to HRT and personal medical history that it's not a straightforward one to answer. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So definitely talk with your doctor. Find a good doctor for a start.
Mhm.
And talk through with your doctor. Amazing. So I've asked in the chat box, does anyone have any questions? But I don't know if anyone's seen that yet. Um, thank you so much for joining us. I very much appreciate it. Is there anything else that you have for us? Any nugget of wisdom that you have up your sleeve, or anything you'd like to leave us with?
I think your last question is probably the thing I would say that I would leave you with, which is, if you are in any way, shape, or form thinking about what's going on, speak to somebody.
Mm,
There's well, by 2030, there'll be 1.2 billion people in the world going through menopause. So you're not alone. And
mm.
I think too many people can think that they're going through this alone and it's only them that is struggling and experiencing this, but that's not the case. So please, please do reach out and talk to someone. So that would be my final takeaway.
Absolutely. And I messaged as many people as I could, because, we all, if especially everyone in this group, right? Everyone's a woman or identifies as a woman. And so we're all going to go through it ourselves, have been through it, or know someone who's going to go through it. So I think it's incredibly important. And this is why I'm trying to educate myself as well on this, is so I can help my clients, so I can help my family, so I can help my friends, and help myself ultimately when we get
Mm.
there. So this is incredibly important and useful for everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Your 3-day free course and that article, feel free to float them through and I'll pop the links below. I'd be more than happy to put
Mhm.
that here. Amazing. Oh, quickly, supplements. Lou says, anything you'd recommend to feel better with supplements?
Again, it's another huge topic. If you go onto my website, Women of a Certain Stage, there is a links page, and in there you'll find all about USANA supplements. I would recommend anybody to have a look at the Cell Essentials, the Biomega, and if you've got joint issues, Procosa. If you're not sleeping well, the Magna D, which is magnesium, calcium, and vitamin D. But yeah, have a look at the USANA supplements on that page to get some. You can read about it. So without doing a consultation, obviously, I don't know what's going to be appropriate for any individual, but have
Mm,
a look at the generic kind of Cell Essentials, which is a multivitamin, multi-mineral. I've been out to their manufacturing plant in Utah. I've been around the whole processing. I chose it when I was pregnant with my son 18 years ago because I'd been offered termination, and I had to make a very big decision about whether to carry on with the pregnancy. And at that time, working as a personal trainer and sports therapist, I researched everything that I possibly could on nutrition, everything on supplements, because I was working like a crazy person all day, every day with this great big bump. And I decided to carry on with pregnancy and now have a strapping 17-year-old young man. But I swear by USANA, and I check every year to make sure that they're still on track with their methodology, their sourcing of products, and I've used that brand. I am a distributor, so I'll declare that, but I don't do it as a business, and I will never be trying to sell you anything, but it's good for a source
mm.
of information.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you know what? Just on a quick note there, I get a lot of people on Instagram and stuff and Facebook come up to me and say, "Hey, recommend my product, recommend my product." And I will not recommend a product unless I've used it myself. And it sounds
Yeah.
like you're very adamant on this. You're constantly checking up, making sure it's a good product. But if we are able to help people with specific products which we know are ethical, know are
Yeah.
really good, then we can always recommend a product that we have used and that we know genuinely in our heart of hearts that work. So
And
no, I fully agree with that.
Yeah, and I say go shop around. Like,
Mm,
that's my personal choice. It's not my recommendation, but the website's a good source of information so
mm,
that you can go and then make your own choice about what you want to use. Because I'm not in a consultative space and I'm not in a selling space here. So yeah.
no, absolutely, absolutely. Well, Lou, I hope that answers your question. Thank you very much. Very much. Thank you very much, everyone. That's the migraine kicking in. Thank you so much, Lauren. I really appreciate it. It's
Pleasure.
been absolutely wonderful. Fantastic knowledge. Like I said, wouldn't trust anyone else on here. Um, I think that's it. Thank you so much. I'm
Nice
going
to
to
see
stop
you.
recording and stop streaming, and you. So that is
Is that
all.
okay?